Okay, thank you. Giving me a heads up.
Sorry, can you hear me clearly? Okay.
That's not Armand.
All right, you're all set. And I'll put you on mute, so you have to unmute yourself to speak.
Good morning. This is Lindy Burt from Public Safety and Justice Services.
Lindy, good morning.
Hi, Ted.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Good. I do not have a camera where I am. I'm at the EOC, so I'm calling in.
Okay, you're fine.
All right.
We will formally designate you as Alex's replacement on an
Yes.
interim basis. My
Okay.
action item.
Okay. Did you receive communication from him on that? I think he said he had sent something.
I'd have to go back and look. We talked about it.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But we'll talk. That's one of the things we're going to talk about just in terms of process.
Sounds good.
Good morning, all.
Time over 10 o'clock on the good morning. We've got David, myself, Director Drucker, Armin. We'll give it another minute, Cardi. Wait to see if and Lindy, so we've got a quorum. Just give Director Lockett a moment. Good morning, David.
Hey, good morning, Ted.
We'll start at 10:01. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call to order our November 2020 meeting of Cuyahoga County's Equity Commission. I'm Ted Carter, the co-chair of the commission and also the Chief Economic Development Officer for the county. I want to welcome you all to our third meeting. Let me begin by taking roll. I'm present, obviously. Director Drucker.
Present.
Director Lockett. Director Merriman.
Present.
And then filling in for Director Pelham, who's on a interim absence, is Lindy Burt. And Lindy, for the record, could you just identify yourself and read your title and position into the record, please?
Sure, I'm Deputy Director of the Department of Public Safety and Justice Services.
Okay, thank you very much. Later in the meeting, before we go into the meat of our agenda, commissioners will make a motion to formally approve Ms. Burt's designation as the replacement for Director Pelham. I'd like to recognize our county executive, who is also present. County executive, would you like to say anything at the top of the meeting?
I can always talk, but why don't you proceed with your agenda and I'll jump in whenever I need to.
Okay. Well, welcome. Good morning. Let's begin. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our last meeting on October 15th? I really want to thank Mr. Anthony Thomas at the Department of Health and Human Services for taking these minutes and making sure that they are so comprehensive and accurately reflecting our conversation. So thank you, Mr. Thomas. I'll give the commission another minute to review if you haven't had a chance and comment on our last meeting minutes. For members of the public, these minutes are posted on the commission website. And so they are open and available to the public. Also want to recognize our equity program manager, Ms. Cardi Morales, who's also with us this morning. She's down in our production studio, de facto production studio on the 4th floor of the county. So good morning, Ms. Morales, and thank you for everything that you're doing to help us keep us organized and the content strong. Okay, commission members, entertain a motion for the minutes from October 15th, 2020 to be adopted as presented.
I'll move. Drucker.
I'll second.
Are there any changes, alterations, or they can be accepted as presented? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. Motion passes.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay.
Belinda.
Sorry, that's who? Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Hey, Ted, if I may, two things I heard. I think Lenora joined us, so I think I want to recognize Lenora. I think is here now. And just very briefly, Ted, I'd also just like to recognize that the scribe for these minutes, Anthony Thomas, was recently promoted. Was promoted this week. Mr. Thomas, some of you have met and worked with, others have not. Has promoted from being a supervisor in Job and Family Services. He is now a team leader. So he is the number 2 for one of our neighborhood family service centers. So it's a very significant development for him, for his career. He's staying on with us in this new role, although he's taking on significantly more responsibilities. So I just wanted to take a second and recognize Mr. Thomas for his achievement.
Congratulations, Mr. Thomas.
And
You probably can't speak, but yeah, thank you for that update, Director Merriman. That's exciting. Okay, so now we're going to go just a brief overview of our progress to date. A lot of significant substantive action is happening in our work together. We'll hear an update from each of the agencies later, but really pleased with the progress we're making, and a couple of updates from my perspective. Several of the co-chairs had an opportunity to meet with the chair of the Citizens Advisory Council to talk about alignment between the two efforts, and didn't arrive at a definitive conclusion coming out of that conversation. But the spirit of the conversation was that the two entities do need to collaborate. An expectation, the chair has made a commitment that the commission and the co-chairs will see a preview of their report prior to its adoption submission on December 31st. So anxiously looking forward to seeing where they land. I know a number of us have now had the opportunity to have internal interviews with members of the Citizens Advisory Council. I had my interview Monday night, quite engaging and informative. And so I think they are really diligently digging into the breadth and depth of the work and challenge ahead of us and their commitment. I think I was the last of 4-hour-long interviews Monday evening. So that is moving apace. We'll hear from each agency as met. Ms. Morales and I have met with each agency to talk about their progress, challenges, and opportunities with this work. I think what we've learned early on is that there needs to be a tandem approach to the internal effort. One that is focused on data as required by the legislation. A second one that focuses on the culture of the county organization, collectively, but also within the individual agencies. And so those discussions are occurring at different stages within each department. And within my own department, very rich conversations and perspectives that my team have offered. The third major item is that I've had a chance with Ms. Morales to talk with Councilwoman Brown about the direction that the commission report is taking. And so I will be talking with each of the commission members individually to share that the details of that discussion and kind of align it with the outline that was adopted by the commission at the last meeting. And Ms. Morales will refresh everyone's memory as to what was the direction we were given in terms of content. But there's depth beneath that. Generally, she is supportive of the direction that we're headed and where we'll land in January. So I think we're on track to have a substantive report, both in terms of process for 2021, as well as specific commitments that the county will make in this space. Won't preview that on this meeting, but I'm very pleased that we'll hit our mark here. So with that, would like to turn it over to Director Wing for an update on communication strategy. As you all know, one thing we haven't spent enough time on as a commission is the outward facing component of our responsibility. And so Ms. Wing will talk about her thoughts as well as maybe some takeaways from the council groundwater conversations that occurred where there may be some overlap. So good morning, Ms. Wing, Director Wing.
Good
Chief
morning.
Wing, excuse me.
Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm actually just going to do a very brief update. The one thing I wanted to share with you is that we have been working on a /fight racism page, which will have a web page, which will have information coming from this commission as well as from CASE, the external commission. And I'm just pulling up the screenshot of that. It's divided up into different areas. One says get engaged, then there's another one that has latest updates, and then at the bottom of the page, it has a link to the County Equity Commission, which is about the role of the commission as well as the Citizens Advisory Council. It also has the meetings right up front there, so you can click in and see the agenda and the minutes as well as meeting, and then the meeting like times, and click onto the live stream. So it makes everything much more accessible to the public. And then there's also a little resources box where we can put things like information about First Year Cleveland or the Bail Project or whatever we think, or the 1619 project from the New York Times, things that we think that people would like to have all in one place. So in terms of regular updates, Marisha Daniels, who is on the phone, comm specialist, will be the person who will write essentially blog posts underneath this latest update. So anytime you have some kind of a communication update or need, we can post that on the /fight racism page, which is linked to off of the home page of the county's main webpage. So really trying to make this easy to navigate to, easy to access. And I will send these screenshots around to this group. And if you see anything that you would like to add, please send it my way. But I do know that we are writing up some updates and plan to get this live either probably after Thanksgiving at this point, but maybe beforehand, maybe early next week. So that's really my major update, other than I also told Kari that my team would be available for editorial support for your report that you need to put out. So we'll be there to help you with edit and cover design and all that kind of stuff. So
Thank you
anything
very
you need
much,
from our team.
Chief, we much appreciate it. We'll definitely need that. And we might touch on kind of our production schedule before we end our meeting. Excuse me. Some other quick updates. As we've talked about in our previous meetings, we are working toward becoming a member of GARE, the Government Alliance for Racial Equality. And so that looks like that will happen shortly. So our application has been submitted and is working toward approval. And either in the December or January meeting, one of the things the county exec asked is that we leverage best practices that have occurred in the space across the country. So being a member of that organization will help us accomplish that goal. At our last meeting, Ms. Sabrina Roberts gave an overview of their equity plan and the kind of work they're positioning for their self-assessment over the next couple of weeks. So we'll talk about the assessment later in this meeting. Director Dever, Director Lockett, and myself met with the Construction Employers Association last week now, just to talk about their perspective on our work, how important they think it is, and how they'd like to be aligned, particularly with driving greater opportunities in the construction industry. And so at some point that we may want to think as a commission about how we accommodate stakeholders across the community to provide input to this process. That's one of the things that they felt was critically important and that they wanted to have a larger visibility. And again, that is a mandate of our work that I think we need to flesh out. And within my department, we've created a small equity team to strategize around ways to create an equity plan and to begin to introduce training. And that's something else that we'll talk about later in this meeting. Is just one thing that has emerged is the desire by our working group and members of our county employees are really hungry to be grounded in the taxonomy and ecology of this work. And so we look forward to hearing perspectives on that. And then we've also begun to disaggregate our programs and data by vertical. The Ohio Means Jobs, they've hired a equity consultant from New Orleans. Ms. Morales and I had a chance to sit in on their one of two sessions that really provided a perspective of equity in the workforce space nationally. Very powerful presentation, data-driven. She went through the history of race and equity in the workforce space going back 70 years to talk about how workforce was developed and was created from an inequitable standpoint as it relates to race. And Ms. Morales and I are going to meet with her to see how this commission may work with her. She has an economic development lens, but her broad perspective and expertise, I think, would be of value to this commission. Human Resources has a number of things underway that are going to support our work. So Director Drucker will touch on that later, and then we'll hear from Director Lockett for providing an update just on where we stand with the disparity study. And the executive has asked this commission to evaluate and review the disparity study. And so we can talk about that in a moment after Director Lockett provides her remarks. With that, let me stop and turn it over to each of the commission members for any remarks or comments.
Yeah, I mean, the only one that I would make at this time, I understand there will be much more discussion about this in the future, but I want to recognize County Executive Armin Budish has proposed that we utilize $250,000 from the Health and Human Service Levy Fund as a part of an equity fund. And this is something that was discussed in County Council on Monday in the Finance Committee. And it is something that I believe will get further discussion at County Council in the near future. Those are public meetings. There was discussion, although brief, about the point and the uses of those funds. But I think it's important to recognize and to include in the record that the county executive is beginning to make investments of or proposing to make investments in the work that that we're all talking about. Yeah, and I think this is it's a great sign. More to come. But that was Monday, and I think we hope to see the completion of that discussion in the near future.
Hello, this is Lenora Lockett. I'm looking at the agenda, and under members, the remarks is listed the disparity study. So am I supposed to give my remarks at this point, Ted?
Yes, Director, that'd be terrific. Anything you'd like to share, just a quick update on where that stands, and since we've been charged with giving some input on the recommendations.
I know we have a follow-up meeting with law for next week. My remarks will basically deal with what the disparity study is. I don't want to go into the details of the disparity study because that's prepared by Griffin and Strong, and they're the expert on the content and why they made the recommendations and assertions in general in the report. The report covers the time period from January 1st of 2014 to December 31st of 2018. It basically looks at the market that the county operates in and determine the diversity of the businesses that are willing and able to provide goods and services to the county within that market. And as a comparison, it looks at the goods and services that the county has purchased in that market and what was the diversity of those businesses that we actually contracted with or purchased from. And you compare that with the availability as far as the diversity components are for those businesses, and determines if there's a disparity, and statistically and anecdotally, whether that disparity can be related to race and gender bias. As such, if that is determined by the experts preparing the report, they make recommendations. In this case, based on the data that they had 9 findings and are making 8 recommendations, a lot of which are programs that we've implemented as a result of the past study, the previous study that was done in 2014. And from that, they're looking at what was the impact and how can we better improve our impact to make sure that there is diversity and inclusion in our contracting and purchasing for Cuyahoga County. So at this point, I guess the next steps would be to figure out how to implement the county's view on those recommendations, how we're going to implement to make sure that our purchasing is more inclusive and more diverse with the businesses that we contract with.
Yes, thank you, Director. Since we're on the topic, let's just spend a minute or two on this. So we've been asked to review it. If we haven't gotten that document to you, I'll make sure that Ms. Morales distributes that to the commission members. And talking with Director Lockett briefly, we'd like to potentially schedule a meeting out of sequence just to be able to address this and support the momentum around this study and the interest in it. One thing that the CEA group did ask, and this is probably more for the county exec than this commission, but they were keen on having some type of public input into that document before recommendations are adopted. I think that's out of our purview. Certainly, we need to give this body a chance to review the document. And my question to the commission members is, would it be helpful to hear directly from the consultant if we're able to execute that, depending on contract flexibility? So Director Lockett has given us a great overview of what the disparity study is. I've had a chance to read it. It's about 200 pages. The core recommendations are in the first quarter of the report. What's people's judgment?
Sorry, Ted, this is Lindy. Can you reframe the question?
No, just would it be useful once everyone has had an opportunity to digest and read the disparity study to hear directly from the consultant? And so we wouldn't be hearing from Director Lockett. The consultant developed the report on behalf of the county. And so she feels strongly that this is a consultant's recommendations. So would we be better informed by hearing from the consultant directly, or do each of you feel that the report is sufficient to provide feedback to the county exec in terms of the recommendations?
Ted, if I can speak, Darman.
Yes, sir.
You know, you can do whatever you want. I think that the report is pretty comprehensive. If you need a better understanding of anything, maybe your first approach would be to our law department, Greg Huth, who worked with them, and see if you can get your answers there.
Okay. Guided by that. Any other questions on what we've been asked to do? And if we give each of you a couple of weeks to kind of digest it, is that?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think it'd be good to look at it before we answer the question of whether we need time to meet with them.
This is Lenora. I concur. I mean, I would recommend that people not get overwhelmed by the number of pages, meaning that it's not like you have to really dig into. A lot of the supplemental pages are the tables and data that led to the content of the report, but they do adequately provide a summary and the reasoning for the recommendations. And the legal review behind it. So I believe it is a easy read, not necessarily that you're happy with the result, meaning that we all would like to believe that everything, our goal, obviously, because we're part of this commission, is that diversity and inclusion is occurring and it's part of our internal fabric, but we feel like we have to bring it to the forefront to make sure it's part of a deliberate decision. It's not just going to happen without effort. And I think, to me, that's what the report basically says. We have to provide effort to get it to the point that it's second nature. It is not second nature. It's first nature by human beings to go with what they're used to, not necessarily what's different.
Okay, here's what I'm going to suggest, is that each of you take an opportunity over the next couple of weeks to review it. I'll check in with you individually the first week in December, see where we stand. And Ms. Morales, when is our next meeting scheduled in December?
I believe it says the next meeting is on Thursday, December 17th.
I guess county exec, does that, if we opine on the report and our next meeting, does that meet your timeline?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I don't have a fixed timeline. It's just, you know, there are the details of the report you can read through. It's pretty explanatory, and I think the most important part are the recommendations, which I'd like you guys to look through. I think those are also easy to understand. You know, talk about them, see if that, what you think of those, and then how we go about satisfying them.
Okay, terrific. Okay, Director Lockett, anything else that this commission can do to support you in your work, and does that process work for you? I'll check in with people early December, make sure that they have working toward a review, and then we will make it an agenda item for the December 17th meeting.
Yes, the last process we work with the law department. We have to look at infrastructure, things of that sort. Yes.
Okay, when you say infrastructure, not sure what you're referring to, but okay.
Specifically, for example, one of the recommendations to fully implement, it might require a staffing increase.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Infrastructure, the resources that are in place that can carry out the recommendations.
Okay, I'm with you. Thank you. Okay. Director Drucker, any updates or comments from you, sir?
Yes, well, as you know, this office is involved in two projects, one having to do with minimum qualifications and the other one having to do with tuition reimbursement. And we are moving ahead at considerable speed with the tuition reimbursement plan, having had some robust discussions with Cleveland State and some preliminary discussions with Tri-C. It's a question of trying to maximize the number of it's trying to maximize the spend with respect to the number of credits that can be offered through the plan. So that is moving. The tuition reimbursement plan is moving very quickly to hopefully some sort of completion by Q1, no later than Q2 of next year. With regards to the minimum qualification project, that's going to be a more extended project, and committees from both the PRC and Human Resources continue to meet and look at the individual job classifications to massage to set standards with respect to experience, the equivalent of experience and education. So we continue to move forward on that. I think both for their own reason, both of these projects have considerable merit and will both from a human resources aspect and from the question of racial equity, I think bring about really very positive changes to the county and act as a role model for other employers in the county.
Two very exciting initiatives, and so I've had
thank you.
a chance to so congratulations for advancing these. I've had a chance to spend some time.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. Just one comment. I am very pleased, and I know Executive Budish is here, but I'm very pleased with the way that both of these proposals have been so readily accepted and looked at it in a positive light. So thank you very much for that.
Yep. Director Drucker, maybe for the benefit of the rest of the commissions who have had less exposure to it, maybe if you can just go in with a sentence or two, how you see these impacting and advancing.
Well, I think at least to me, it's a door opener. It opens up doors for people who might not have been able to walk through those doors before. Just because someone does not have a baccalaureate or even an associate's degree doesn't mean that they're not qualified for particular positions. And a substitute of experience for someone who, for the sole reason that they couldn't afford to go to college, has been locked out of promotions and opportunities. The same applies to tuition reimbursement. That for whatever economic or social reason, people have been locked out of college. This gives them an opportunity to consider it and to move ahead, and opens up professional opportunities to people who might not have had them without a tuition reimbursement plan. So I think that's the way. From that perspective, I think that adds a great deal of value to our effort. From a human resource perspective, it gives us a whole new pool of candidates, qualified candidates for positions, and really gives us a talent bank to recruit from, rather than having to look high and wide for candidates. We may have them now very well in our own backyard.
Yep. No, I'm very excited about this, and I think the long-term impact would be quite significant. I know in my interview,
I absolutely agree
with the Citizens Council, and I'm told and others that one of their questions was looking at the diversity of the county workforce, which I think we would all acknowledge is diverse, but as you go up the levels of seniority, more work to do there. So this will create a pipeline to achieve greater diversity at the more senior ranks. Okay, thank you for that. Director Burt, your newest member, want to give you an opportunity to say any opening comments or perspectives as you fill in for Director Pelham, and then we'll make a motion here shortly to formally appoint you and Alex and Director Pelham's stead during his absence.
Okay, well, thank you, Ted. Yeah, Alex is out until probably about mid-December, so he's asked me to participate on his behalf. So I'm just working to get up to speed on your activities, and we'll support as best as I can. And we'll also be communicating with him. I know he'll start to dabble in working again from home as he can, and we'll make sure he's aware of, like, for example, the review of the disparity study by the next meeting. And so thanks for allowing me to participate. Glad to be here.
I really value your perspective, given your tenure with the county and the different roles you've had. So please feel free to speak up and lean into any area that has energy for you and interest for you. So with that, Director Merriman, you raised at the last meeting the need to either on an ad hoc basis or for a longer term basis designate commission alternate. So I wanted to turn that over to you for your perspective. And
Well, I think this is a common practice within all of the boards and commissions that focus on internal operations and functions. Let's just recognize that for us to move forward with a significant pace, we need to have regular meetings, standing meetings, and at times that won't be, those meetings just won't work for staff. So what we thought would be important would be for us to have designates that could represent a director at one of the named departments. And I think we see that today in the need to have Lindy Burt here and have her present and participate on behalf of Justice Services. So I don't think we need to go into too much more detail. I think I just simply would recognize that if each department has a person in mind, that they simply send a communication to you, the chair, Ted, and CC Cotty, and to, in essence, memorialize. I think this could be as simple as an email saying, on behalf of the department, I've asked for this staff person to serve as the designate or the alternate for our department in the Equity Commission meetings. And I think once those are presented, I think, and we have a person that's documented for each department, we could bring that forward, and and that allows us to continue forward with the quorum, regardless of circumstance. I think the only area that would be open for discussion is, do we need more than one? And I just don't feel like at this time that's necessary. I think this is really important. So if we have the director and one delegate or alternate, that should be sufficient. But I know at times other groups have done multiples, and I wouldn't advise that at this time. So Ted, that's my recommendation, is that each department send a communication from the principal appointed authority, recognizing by name and classification who would be their alternate. And that once those are all submitted to you, we can formalize that in a document and present that at the next Equity Commission meeting, and then we could have it listed in the record.
okay, I think that's wise and prudent, Director Merriman. So with that, I'd like to advance a motion that the commission formally appoint in Director Pelham's stead during his absence, Deputy Director Lindy Burt to the Public Safety and Justice slot for this commission, effective immediately and through the duration of his absence.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Welcome, Director Burt, officially, formally.
Thank you. Great to be here. Look forward to it.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Moving toward the working group updates, Ms. Morales has been working diligently with each department along some of the more strategic initiatives that are important to advancing this work. So I'm going to turn it over to her for 2 specific updates. Yep. Thank you, Ms. Morales. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Marshall quickly, but wanted to just pause for a moment on this recommendation that's not formal, but that is a strong consensus by the working group of the need for REI training across the county. And really want to point to Dr. Harris and Ms. Roberts, who have really kind of insisted that we take this approach, which I'm fully bought into. And I think it's important because all of you have heard that old saying in management, culture eats strategy for lunch. And they have really educated me on the importance of go slow to move fast and grounding everyone to the extent that we can get everyone on the same foundational understanding of this issue as well as the potential of it is important if we're going to sustain this effort over the long term. And so how we structure the REI training, what that looks like for each department, we'll address that. But I think that this the strength of the number of people who support it, and some of whom have not even gone through REI training, so I think that even gives it more power. The recommendation. So thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Harris and Ms. Roberts, for your leadership here and kind of the example you're setting in HHS and the cultural shift here. My only suggestion is that Director Drucker, we have your team be more connected to the work. Not that you haven't been, but I see this as an HR function that I think we'd be better served, particularly as we export it across the county, that HR be front and center in terms of how we unfold these the REI training. I know that you have some training in mind as well.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
So with that, Ms. Schieber Marshall from the HR.
Okay, so I think mine is fairly quick and fairly simple. One of the things that we would like to see and propose, of course, is that maybe we get some uniform questions across the agency. And so we had three that we'd like to bring forward and get your thoughts on them. And the first one, since the passing of the resolution, R 2020-0122, declaring racism as a public health crisis in July 2020, what steps have your agency taken to advance racial equity? That was one. Then the second was, do you have an equity plan for 2021? If so, please share. If not, please describe what next steps your agency will take to create one. And then the third one, do you have metrics you will be analyzing and setting as benchmarks in 2021? If so, what are they? If not, which ones would you consider? An assessment, surveys, baseline information? And we thought if we could uniform the questions, then possibly the answers would be easier to analyze because it would be across agencies. These are just some that as a working group that we've been working on and like to just bring forward and get your thoughts on them.
Mr. Marshall, there's a thought here that there would be between now and the finalization of the commission's report, that these would be baseline questions that would be sent to everyone in the county. Is it at the leadership level, or how are you in the working group thinking about it? What's your specific recommendation in terms of dissemination and who would answer these questions?
So I'm going to ask Kari to help with that one, but I don't think that these are questions that we could get necessarily, comprehensive answers to by the deadline of this report. I mean, it goes back to your comment about going slow to move fast. I mean, we want the answers to be useful. We want the answers to be, to provide as much information as they can. Kari, what are your thoughts on that question? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I guess, what specific action are you looking for the commission, Ms. Marshall, today?
Just your thoughts on the direction of these questions. So if we're using them to direct them toward the pilot agencies, What are your thoughts? Are these questions that you see would be valuable in getting the answers to? Do you see them as too vague, too broad? Would your idea be that they would be at the leadership management level? Should we attempt to try and get them at a level, maybe not leadership management only, but across the agency, across the pilot agencies?
Ms.
So just a
Marshall,
little bit of guidance, I
this is-
think.
I'll start with
is,
my perspective and then
oh.
go ahead. I was talking, I'll defer.
Thank you, Ted. This is Lindy from Public Safety. Although we are not one of the pilot agencies, I had
Mhm.
reviewed the questions, and so I put myself in the shoes of a department leader who was answering these, and I did feel that in reading these, I wondered is I don't know. They are pretty broad, and I felt in some cases, at least for our department, we would need some technical assistance or support even to answer some of these. For example, on the metrics. We
Okay.
would want so is I don't know, or we need help with this, an appropriate answer? Because I could see us having to answer that way for some of these.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
My thought,
This is Lenora. Oh,
go ahead, Director Lockett.
I'm trying to figure out. I understand the basis behind the questions. I agree that everyone's going to be at different points, different stages, and it should be a continual evolution. I mean, we have the January 31st, but this is something we're continuing on. So that's one baseline point, but the effort is supposed to be continuing. But how does what we respond fit into the report? I've heard different things, like if you have a report, that becomes an appendix. But then we discussed at a previous meeting where we went over this Equity Commission report outline, where you have the different pilot agencies that they were going to do their summary within. So I'm trying to figure out, and how does the questions fit in? Is this a requirement? And we're saying flexibility, or is that those are the guiding details that should come out in whatever our report is? The answers to those questions, how does it relate to that?
Great question, Director
Yeah.
Lockett. So to answer both Ms. Marshall's question and your question, my perspective is that this is a starting point of the discussion. And so I think that it should be directed to the agency head at this point, and we rely on each agency head to extract perspectives from their teams and include that in their response. On the session that we sat with OMJ, they started some baseline questions that are a little different than these. And they took a sampling of people from across the agency at both senior management as well as mid-management. And then there were some frontline people, and they had a numeric answer to some of these questions. And so if OMJ is open to that, we're happy to share that. And so it's very rich in terms of, as a starting point. So it's not conclusive. And then I think our thought is, and again, I stressed my comment in our first meeting that this is an iterative process. So we're not going to be able to define everything at this moment. And so we need to kind of push and pull collectively and determine where we want to go. And so for them, it created a baseline that they can then present to their employees and say, based on the sample who answered, this is a perspective. Do you agree as we export this? But I think the goal would be over the course of 2021 to determine a mechanism where we could socialize this with the majority of employees in the county. As we've talked about this at the agency level, there's some people who are in the field and so may not have the ability to quickly answer these questions or think about them. And so, it has to be modified to each agency's culture and environment. But we would expect to see, we believe that these questions are possible to answer in the 60 days that we have. They can be summarized and then included as a perspective in the report, determining how we structure the final document.
So it's not flexible. You're expecting each pilot agency to answer the questions. I guess I'm trying to figure out exactly. So for instance, in my agency, we have the diversity division that does the external with the vendors. But then if we're talking employee, that's a different component. Is that an HR perspective on how each employee feels about racism and equity, or how we implement the programs that diversity and inclusion, which is how we do contracting and purchasing with external entities, and also we have buyers in every different agency.
Yep, Director Lockett, with your permission, just given the time, do you mind if we take this offline and meet with you and Director Drucker or Ms. Marshall and sit with you so we can kind of work through the uniqueness of your agency around this issue, but really land in this meeting with directionally these questions feel appropriate, and then we can figure out how to implement them within each agency, making it consistent with the county approach.
That's fine. We can have another meeting. I just want to make sure I'm understanding flexible and then required.
Okay. Mr. I'll just make that as an action item to meet with Director Lockett and HR as a follow-up. Any other commissioners have a perspective? Director Drucker, Mr. Merriman?
Yeah, I think from the last work group, there was good discussion around not whether or not we should be surveying staff to answer these questions, but when and how. And I thought there was some very valuable points brought up that, the timing on surveys, the timing on outreach staff is it's important to understand the context of something like that. I'd just like to recognize for myself, I feel there's a lot of stress and tension going on. Naturally, that occurs at this time of year, but given everything that's going on with COVID increases as well as the close of the election, now is a tense time. And I think we have to be mindful of any broad surveys that would be released, and just wanting to understand, are we responding to the natural state or the current context? So go on, Jesse.
I think that's a very good point, David. I think timing is really important on this survey. And I might even suggest that we wait to survey after the first of the year or after mid-year January. I think, we're in a state where there's a faction who is trying to delegitimize the election. So there's a tremendous amount of controversy around that. There's diplomatic things that are happening with respect, which bring up questions of security. So I'm unsettled that this is the appropriate time to throw out a survey. I think perhaps caution dictates that we wait another 2 months or so before that goes out. Understanding what our mandate is.
Okay. So what I hear, let me see if I can synthesize the comments, is support for the survey, some refinement required, both in terms of structure and timing, and that we'll review this, maybe not include these baseline questions, the results, however they were going to be adopted. I think the initial thought was to have it at a senior level, not across each agency and every employee, given the magnitude of that, particularly Public Works and HHS, and defer until January to revisit. I see heads nodding.
Yeah,
see heads.
Yeah, I
I
think,
think-
after
on.
you, David.
No,
After you,
I
Dave.
think Jesse did a nice job summarizing. I agree with him.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think your summary, Ted, hits it appropriately.
Okay, good deal.
I like the language you use there, Kadi. I think is very good. I think it's facilitating conversation. I think we're at a point where, frankly, I'd be surprised if these questions are not being discussed right now. If there isn't a lot of work that's being done to answer some of the themes that you're trying to really provide detail on, I don't think that the approach has been the formal structure of a survey that would go out to staff and staff who maybe haven't really gotten the preparation and haven't been given the time to think about this. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to given your kind of need to go back to the work group and to have some more discussion with them. I think I'd just like a little bit more time to get input from my directors. I understand the three questions that we're looking at, and I'd just like to be able to go to them and say, are these the three, are these really questions that you are thinking about yourselves? Are they questions that you're talking about amongst your teams? And what's the early reaction to them? Because I know this is going on, and I would hate to try to represent the 2,300 staff at this time without further input.
Okay, so we'll discuss the questions, Ms. Morales, at the working group. Well, you've already discussed them, but ask people to discuss them within the pilot agencies. And if we can, I think we'll get the document and assessment that OMJ has launched. I think, David, the only not perspective I'd add to what you've said is that we had a lot of anecdotal information. And so the assessment tools and survey, in my mind, is too strong a word at this point, but just not a better word. It's really to get more data around that you can point to versus just personal anecdotes that then become narrative because what we have seen in the agencies, even though in the working group, is that there's a spectrum of where people land on need for this and the outcomes. So that data will help guide shape our decisions. So with that, David, let me turn it over to you to the next item, please, for the recommendations for the Equity Commission that have emerged from the working group.
I'm sorry, I'm filtering between documents. Kadi, were there formal recommendations? I think the biggest discussion item at the last working group was this, that we propose that we get simply feedback from this commission as we have today on how to move forward with the gathering information. Kadi, can you give me a hand? What are the other ones that we were bringing forward for recommendation? Yeah. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. I should actually have, that was what I was looking for. I do think there is a draft scope of work. Our request was that all commission members provide work group members provide feedback on that draft. I think the goal was to have that feedback to Kadi by Monday. I know some folks submitted it. I think it's a great start in terms of identifying what scope we want to really commit to in seeking out outside input and support. And I think that group is doing outstanding work to try to just hone in on what it is that we would like to work together with an external partner on.
Yeah, I think there was some additional discussion, Director Drucker, and this is just a heads up for you, some energy around, and I certainly, you and I have talked about, is given the working group strong consensus that the internal commission would start in addressing culture in this area, in addition to analyzing data that potentially HR be considered being added as a pilot agency in addition to the 5 that have been identified. So that may come forward in December as a formal recommendation.
Okay.
Ms. Morales, before we go to a brief overview of the Citizens Advisory Council, probably going to run 2 minutes over here. Just an update on the equity report outline, just so that you heard some questions about that earlier. Just kind of click through that, and I think that we can present a more refined outline to this commission based on the draft that was approved at the last meeting. Ms. Morales and I have had a opportunity to flush that out. And again, preview that with Councilwoman Brown and a little bit with the exec. So we'll come back with a more complete draft that we'll work toward for the final report. But you just want to go through the timeline and elements as they stand now, Ms. Morales, please. Yes, it does. Just want to open that. We probably will strive to include some other cross-cutting county initiatives that could be reflected in the report, such as the one that Mr. Merriman outlined, which is already on its way, which is the creation of an equity fund. So we'll definitize that a bit more in the report of how that will be intentionally deployed, depending on the final approval of that. And there are a couple of others. So it should be a nice outline of a go-forward plan, some substantive near-term commitments that have been made by the executive and county leadership, as well as agency perspectives and updates in the 4 months that each agency has been working on its dimension of the equity effort. But we'll have a very robust and specific roadmap for 2021. Okay, we'll end quickly on a Citizens Advisory Council. Clerk Bird could not be on the call today, but you want to provide her update, Ms. Morales, please? Okay, thank you for that update. Couple of to-dos. So for the commission members is please take an opportunity to review the disparity study. I will check in with you after Thanksgiving to see where you are in terms of review. We'll make it an agenda item to present our formal recommendations to the executive at that meeting. We'll determine if there's any additional questions that we may have that the report doesn't answer clearly for us. We will socialize the questions that Ms. Marshall suggested with the working group at the next meeting. We will refine the draft outline. By the time of the next meeting, the co-chairs will probably have had the opportunity to get an oral briefing from Chairman Taylor on the direction of the council's report. Let's see here. Anything I've missed, Ms. Morales, in terms of next steps? There's one I'm forgetting. We've adopted. Okay, well, everybody have a terrific Thanksgiving. We'll follow up with an email if there's anything we've missed at this meeting, but we're at 11:05, so appreciate everyone's time very much. But again, thanks for the hard work and the energy. The members of the public and other county employees can't see it, but the dedication and energy of this group has been extraordinary.
Agree.
So thank you very, very much. Have a safe Thanksgiving with your families and loved ones.
Thank you.
Ted, and thanks, Scotty, for your work on this. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Same to everyone. Have a nice holiday and great job.